thing that every writer needs to be successful? Well, honestly, there's probably a couple different answers to that question. You can answer it a lot of ways, but I'm going to try to give you at least one important answer here in just a couple of minutes. It's Sam with another Friday writing video for you. Hope you're doing well, and thank you for tuning in here. It's Friday. I'm off. I told you before, or I said before, I have every other Friday off of my work schedule, and I've been trying to do bigger discussions like group ones and interviews and such like that on my off Fridays. Well, today's an off Friday, but I didn't plan anything big. I actually had a sleep study done last night, which is where you go into the doctor's office and they hook you up to a bunch of machines and you sleep there and they monitor your sleeping patterns. I probably have sleep apnea. That's a different topic. Was like, I was like, if I'm not sure how well I'm going to sleep and I'm not sure how I'll feel the next day, I don't want to really plan any big video events for today. Turns out I slept decently, at least given the circumstances of being in an unfamiliar bed, hooked up to machines, but still just a shorter talk for today. But I wanted to talk to you in the time we have about my latest nonfiction read. Now, usually on here, I've been reviewing my fiction reads because most of us are interested in writing fiction. I am too. This is primarily a fiction video series, podcast, whatever you want to call it. But I think my latest nonfiction read will be of interest to a lot of fiction readers. So let me show you what it is. This is called Bandersnatch, and the subtitle is C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien, and a creative collaboration of the Inklings. And the author is Diana Palvac Glyer. Hope I said that right, but I'll just let you see it there. Diana Palvac Glyer. And as it suggests, it's a book about the Inklings. If you don't know the Inklings, they were a group of writers who got together and just sat together and formed friendships and critiqued each other's works. Back in the day, the most notable names on there, of course, are on the subtitle C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien, but there's also some other somewhat known names like who was in there: Owen Barfield, Charles Williams, a couple others were mentioned who I'm not too familiar myself, but I've at least heard their names. Hugo Dyson, I think. You can find out when you read the book or anything like that. Um, so this is a book about how different writers basically worked in community together, and not necessarily collaborating on projects, although they did some of that, but how they influenced each other's work and each other's writing process, basically. Okay, and the author starts with the premise, or in the opening, like someone had said to her, like everyone knows the Inklings influence each other, but we can't really prove how specifically. So her book in the course in this course in the course of this book, she tries to demonstrate just specific, tangible examples of how the Inklings influence each other, and it's really cool if you're into that kind of thing. I mean, especially if you're a fan of Lewis and Tolkien, like many of us are. But even if you're not, if you're just a fan of the creative writing process in general, and you want to know more about that, it's an interesting book. When I first picked it up, I thought it was going to be maybe a little more philosophical, psychological about you know, the purpose for writing groups and how groups work in community, and it wasn't that. It was actually very accessible, which is a good thing in many ways. Um, there was some philosophy and some psychology, and sure, mixed in. She did an analysis of the authors from their historical letters and such, but mostly she was just giving very specific ways, examples in which the Inklings influenced each other. Like she looked at different drafts of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and found like an older draft that had some of C.S. Lewis's comments on it or someone else's comments, and she compared it to the published version. And Tolkien had taken out a lot of fluff that was interesting to him, but wasn't really interesting to the reader. Apparently, he liked just kind of hobbits and their silly nonsense, like I don't know, telling jokes and just sitting around smoking and drinking and eating and doing what hobbits do, and he liked a lot of that. And everyone else was saying like, just pick up to the adventure, just skip off, condense or skip that stuff and get to the adventure. And he did that. So she compared it to like the the published version, and he had done that. And there's several more examples. That was the one I remember, but basically she goes through and gives specific examples of how the influence each other and how that community shaped their works. So to answer the question that I posed at the beginning, what is the one thing a good writer needs to be successful? I'm going to say community, a community of other writers, or at least like-minded people who can help you help you not only get yourself off the ground and not only serve as official editors or beta readers, although I know some of us do that too, but just someone who can encourage you along the process and such like that too. She talks about resonators being one kind of, I guess, person who gives feedback, which in this case just means someone with whom your work resonates. You can say, I'm writing this kind of story, this is the premise, these are the ideas and the plot, or you can read them in a section and they'll say, hey, I get that. It resonates with me. I like it. I want more. We all need that kind of feedback, that kind of encouragement. Hopefully some of us have had it before. And of course, she talks about, more detailed constructive criticism where sometimes to the point of saying negative things. Apparently, Hugo Dyson really disliked Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, and that had an effect on the group. You can read more about that in the book. But, and she talks about those who gave constructive criticism, like I like this, but I don't like this. Here's how you can maybe fix it. Things like that, and how it affected them. So it's very practical. I mean, again, there are some instructions for there's some applications to our own writing groups too, which I guess is also practical. But it's very much just here are some examples of some that we get from their documents and from their notes and manuscripts and such, where we can actually see how the Inklings influence each other. So I thought it was really cool to read. It's not that long. It was like maybe 200 pages. Yeah. With the bibliography, it's and the index, it's only like 202. So anyway, quick read. I read it in about a week. And I mean, I'm busy these days. I've talked about how my reading process is kind of slow, just because I give myself maybe 30 minutes to an hour at night, and I just don't have time to binge read like I used to. But even in that, even that being the case, it only took me about a week to read through, maybe a little more than a week, maybe 9 days. I don't know. Anyway, good quick read. I recommend it if you're interested in the Inklings, the historical Inklings, or if you're interested in creative writing and how that works. Great little book to check out. Bandersnatch by Diana Palvac Glyer. And I wanted to talk from there about my experience with a similar group. I've been part of a group in the past couple of years that has tried to do similar things to what Lewis and Tolkien and those others did, and because we're very original, we also call ourselves the Inklings. There's a whole reason for that. Our group was kind of founded by a Tolkien scholar from a school in Georgia who a friend of a friend knew. Long story. I can tell you more information later if you want. But and now that I've moved away and everything, and other people have moved away, the group has kind of fallen apart. It takes a while for these it's hard for writing groups to stay active sometimes, and honestly, I'm surprised this one stayed active as long as it did, but it did. And long story short, now my wife and I are kind of trying to start a new Inklings in Texas where we are, and it's it's slow starting something new, but it's happening maybe. Anyway, my point is, I've been part of a writers group in some capacity for 4-ish years now. My wife has been for longer, and it's had an impact on my writing too. So you all know I'm working on cutting my novel down to a more reasonable length. It's been long and crazy. My first, well, not even my first draft, but my previous draft was close to 200,000 words, and even if everything else was perfect in it, which probably wasn't, but even if it was, wordiness is still an issue. So this round of edits, which is hopefully one of my last runs of edits before querying, I am just working on primarily cutting the word count, and I pulled this up to do some comparison, and I'll give you a little side-by-side comparison, just like she did of Tolkien in the book. But this is more of a relic than anything. This is my original self-published printed version of Fractured Heroes from 2012, which is 10 years ago now, which is crazy. I started working on the story in 2010. I wrote it, basically, I drafted it in 2010, 2011. I may have done some minor edits. I honestly don't remember. It was 10 years ago. But I'm sure it wasn't extensive or as much as it was needed. And I hastily put out a few self-published copies in 2012, not many. It was more print on demand than anything. But here's a copy of what I put out in 2012. And it's thick. I mean, the font is also probably bigger than it should have been. But again, it's long. And one thing I've worked on cutting down is wordiness. So let me take just one passage. I'll just read you a couple paragraphs that I know I've cut down since then. Like I've read it aloud to our Inklings group and gotten feedback there. I mean, not just one passage, but the whole story. And I've had a couple other friends look through read through it and give me feedback independently of that. And so, not that it's perfect, but it's come a long way since 2010 or 12, and it's gotten a lot of feedback along the way. So I think it's a lot better. And let me show you just a quick tangible example of that. I'll read you 2 paragraphs from the original, or this is as close to the original as I still have. This is the 2012 self-published version, and let's see, and you can see how wordy and clunky it is. And even I'm looking back at this now as, I'd say, a better writer now, not perfect, but better than I was 10 years ago. And I'm like, oh, it's cringy because I'm so clunky, and I realize that now. But it's okay. This is how we learn and how we grow and things like that, by looking at our old stuff and realizing how far we've come. So this is just a couple paragraphs about Lady Light. She's the character here on the cover. Young, idealistic superheroine. She has like flight and force field powers, and she's trying to investigate one of the bad guys, a former crime boss, and she's basically disabled one of his guards so she can sneak into his house. And here's a couple paragraphs about her thought process and such. Lady Light almost hated to do such a thing to the man, as she knew that he was not the real villain, but just a worker doing his job. She also felt bad about breaking into Benedetti's house to pry into his life, especially since she held out hope that he really had changed his ways. He was, however, a suspect, and so he had to be investigated, and she told herself that what she was doing was for the greater good. Still, she found it a little unusual that the guard had threatened to shoot immediately, and followed through not long after that, instead of starting with something a little less drastic, such as calling for backup or the police. Was it just because he was a known superhero? Had Benedetto told his guards to react more harshly to them, especially after Miracle's and Ruby's visits the previous night? If so, then was it because he really did have something to hide? Lady Light hoped to find the answers to some of these questions inside. She bent down to the comatose guard and found a key ring on his belt. She picked it up and tried a few keys until she found one that opened the mansion's back door. Once the door was open, she dropped the key ring, slipped inside, and closed the door behind her. Okay. You can see, I guess, hopefully, how clunky that was. A lot of inner thoughts, just a lot of it explaining her thought process to the reader, which, one piece of advice I've received over time is just trust the reader to get things. Trust the reader to understand things. Don't explain every little thought process to the reader. So I've tried to make it over time, not just that scene, but the whole thing, more like they say, basically a camera lens in a movie, where there's no inner thoughts, inner dialogue, just what the camera can see and hear. I'm sure there are a few places where I still have inner thoughts and dialogue, but not nearly as many. Here's those same 2 paragraphs, much shorter, in my current version. She hated to do such a thing to the guard. He wasn't the real villain, just a worker doing his job. And she felt bad about breaking into Benedetto's house to pry into his life, especially since she held out some hope that he really had changed his ways. Weren't her actions illegal too, after all? She told herself that it was for the greater good, and if she didn't think about it too much, then she could almost believe it. She found a keyring on the guard's belt. After a few tries, one of the keys opened the mansion's back door. Hope slipped inside. That's her real name, Hope, closing the door behind her. And that's it. Even that first paragraph that I read, I'm just reading it just now, I was like, I probably could cut out even a few words more. I bet I could, but I definitely cut out a lot of the just the long explanations about her thought process and such like that, because one, I'm trying to cut words. 2, people have told me to. After those paragraphs, there's a few others about where she's just exploring things on her own, so it's more of her own thoughts, and I've tried to condense those from the original also, and just cut down the description and go from there. So yeah, anyway, that's how having a group has influenced me, having a group of Inklings, or whatever you want to call them, beta readers, editors, just friends, who are like-minded friends who are interested in the same things. And so my announcement to you today, all creative writers out there, 1, if you're interested in how creative writing works, read this book, Bandersnatch, Diana Palvac Glyer. 2, you can't be a successful writer without community. That point is not original to me. I mean, she says something similar towards the end of this book, and I'm sure others have said it before, but it's true. And again, it doesn't have to be just a formal group that meets every 2 weeks and like for 4 hours. That's kind of what we've done, and we did other stuff. If you have a group like that that's dedicated to creative writing just like that, great, awesome. If you don't, have a few friends or family members who are around to encourage you, and just say like, hey, you're doing a good job. Have a few people who will read at least portions of your work and give you feedback on it, even if it's not like super detailed editing. At least things like, I like this, I don't like this, here's what's working, what's not, things like that. I mean, even if it's not, excuse me, even if it's not a formal community group, you still need some kind of people around you, some kind of community around you, big or small, to help you on your journey. And writing communities are easier to find than ever because there's the internet these days. I'm part of a fairly active writers group on Facebook. There's ones on LinkedIn, and I'm sure other places too. You know, you could maybe even search your area and find one that meets in person near you. I'm sure there's places like that. So it's easier than ever to find like-minded people who will cheer you on in your journey. And if you don't have anyone else, you know, talk to me. I'm putting out these videos, but honestly, I'm still on my journey. I'm not a successful writer yet. I have a day job, but I haven't published a novel, a best-selling novel yet. I'm on my journey. I'm trying to help other writers too. If you have no one else to talk to on your writing journey, say hi. I'd love to chat with you and just hear how you're doing and what's going on and what you're working on, because I need that too. That's the accountability. That's the community. That's how we all grow. So yeah, my admonishment to you, creative writers, aspiring writers, whatever level you're at, have a community of writers or of like-minded people to help you on your journey. Whether that's in a formal community or just a few friends, whether it's big or small, online or in person, whatever, you need community. You need other people to help you grow and to give you feedback and encourage you and support you and just help you figure out your own journey on writing, things like that. That's all for today. Hope that was helpful. Hope you learned a few things. Hope your writing journey is still going well, and hope you have a wonderful weekend. I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.